Well, September of 2013 bestowed some blessings upon the world. One of which was that was the year and the month that the Foundry launched, and I pray that that's been a blessing to you. It has to me. But the second that came to mind this morning was the song "What Does the Fox Say?" came out in September of 2013. You remember that? That had a viral moment. Now, you need to know that because my Mother's Day gift circa 2014 would have been to change the words of "What does the fox say?" to "What does the mom say?", which would let my children lightly roast their mother with all of their favorite momisms, like time for shoes and things like that. It's built into the lexicon of our family, and it's a light roast, but also a fun tribute. Because here's the reality. Just like there's some things that we hear from our family of origin that we kind of take with us along the way, right? The fun, at 7:35 we call for shoes and it's time to go, to words of empowerment, to maybe tougher parts of that conversation. Crystal Ancarrow did not, that's my mother, did not invent the phrase, "Oh, get off your high horse." But she is the first person I heard say it that I can remember. And I don't think she was talking to me, or about me, though it might be possible. Because, I had some demands in 1987. The reality is that phrase, "get off your high horse," dates to the 1400s. It dates to an era where if you were royalty or of power or esteem, you rode a taller, more handsome thoroughbred through the streets to wield your status, your power, to say to the rest of the commoners, "You are common." In an era of aristocratic overreach circa 1700s, when there are revolutions afoot in the world, that the high horse became a pejorative way of saying, yeah, we got to get off your high horse, people. And today, what do we use it for? Hey, you are being condescending, you are arrogant, you think you're better than me, or something related to it, right? Do you know anyone in life that needs to get down off of their high horse? Are you the answer to someone else's? I hope I don't know, that's maybe an uncomfortable conversation for us to have. What we've been doing as a church, if you're just joining us today, and welcome if you are, is looking at the junk that piles up, the weights that accumulate, that kind of create workarounds to this profound invitation that we celebrated a few weeks ago, to participate in resurrection hope, to receive it in our life and story, to walk in it and extend it to others. It's a beautiful, profound invitation that we celebrate on Resurrection Sunday. But man, we've got some junk that kind of gets up, piles up, gets in the way, right? So we've been looking at very socially acceptable junk. Insecurity is pretty normative, right? Shame is pretty pervasive. People-pleasing is kind of how you get stuff done sometimes. But paying attention to the ways in which it trips us up and keeps us from walking in that profound invitation from Jesus is one of the things that we're just trying to pay attention to in our time together. And today we want to look at this idea of getting off our high horse, before it carries us out of town. And this idea of processing, and you're not going to like this word. I don't like this word. Entitlement, and the intersection of entitlement and the ways in which it might be creating some piles, creating some weight in your work around. Now let me be clear. When I say entitlement, I don't mean you are so arrogant. How dare you? I do mean maybe passively. What are the things that you feel like God or others or the world kind of owes you? You think it's maybe a reward or an outcome. And you wouldn't say it out loud, but as you go about your business and things go a certain way, you find yourself feeling a little violated, feeling a little frustrated with how the world's working. And what we want to do with this, first of all, is call out, often, and we're going to revisit this theme over and over, this is coming from a place of pain or frustration. Not just I woke up in the morning and I decided that the world revolved around me. I don't think a lot of people do that. You might feel like a lot of people do that, particularly if you work in customer service of some kind. Like you see, like we see and experience this all the time in other people. What we want to do in our time together is maybe begin to process it ourselves, in ourselves. And maybe that will help us even process that nonsense around others too, right? So Jesus gives us this parable. We've read it once. Kate read it for us eloquently. So I'm not going to work back through the passage line by line, but what I do want to do is highlight the points because now you know what I'm connecting it to, right? So Jesus' preferred method of storytelling is this parable idea. Like here's a short story, here's a kingdom point that you can draw from it. And sometimes the meanings are layered, like which way do you turn the gem and how do you see this particular thing? This would be one of those texts. You know, it lands in this place of the last shall be first, the first shall be last. Like you've probably actually heard that statement attributed to Jesus. But like the parable that gets us there is kind of a weird one, isn't it? Right? So there's this vineyard owner who's going to go hire day laborers. Doesn't need an engineer with a salaried position and benefits. Doesn't need a contractor to come through. He needs people that will come work and do seasonal work. So he goes to a place where people are accumulating, making a living, doing seasonal work, day laboring, and goes to them at 9 o'clock in the morning and says, hey, for a denarius, here's the job, who wants to come, right? He hires some people, they get after their business. Now, a denarius, you need to know this, that's a living wage. So there's no undercutting here, there's no nonsense, there's no, bait and switch. That is a living wage for the first century. Denarius, like if you were to figure out the daily living wage of what the average person lives on in Baltimore or needs to live on in Baltimore, it's that, okay? We're good in that sense of the word. Okay. So they get after the project that's working now. The foreman's got everyone doing their deal. And what does the vineyard owner do? He goes back to where the day laborers are, and he finds a few other folks, brings them in. There's 4 kind of quarters in the Jewish workday, in like little 3 hour, these chunks of time. And up until the 11th hour, like he's after it. Kind of going after, like, going and getting more people, bringing people in, saying to them, like, hey, why are you still here? Well, no one's hired us. They're not lazy. They're not, like, ill-tempered. Like, they're just, like, nobody has come and, like, hired us. Okay, well, come on in. So we get to pay time, right? Remember, we're talking day laborers now. So there's not direct deposit, 2 weeks. Our people will call your people. We get to the end of the day. You get 2 things going on. We got a foreman who's ready to pay up, a vineyard owner who's like, hey, we're going in reverse order. The person that got here the latest, they're getting paid first. And maybe if you're the person that got there 9 o'clock in the morning, this is where you're tuning out. Think about the last 15 minutes of your workday. And you're like on the clock and you're like, oh man, I am, are you sprinting to get out of there? Are you thinking about where you're going to get your rotisserie chicken or what you're having for dinner? Or, no, you meal prepped on Sunday, let's be honest. Like you already did the thing. You're thinking about some kind of thing. And something like happens in that part of the day where this guy that's there at 9 a.m. is like now, as he's hearing people get paid that got there later than him, something irks him. What is it? That they are getting, for like 1 hour of work, the same amount that he got for being there all day and sweating it out. And when it gets to be his turn to get paid, like whatever gap of time that is, like he would like to speak to the manager. He's going to file his complaint. Like, no, wait a second, what have you done? Like, I thought I was, because maybe in his mind he's like, well, if they're given a denarius, maybe he's going to give me like 4 times the amount. And what he actually gets is what was owed him, what they agreed upon. And like if you look at around verse 13, like Jesus gives the vineyard owner's posture. The vineyard owner's like, didn't I pay you what I owed you? Didn't we do what we agreed to do? Like anything I gave anyone else was a grace. Like, I gave you what I owed you. It's kind of rich and a little funny that you're telling me how to, like, run my vineyard. Take your pay and go. Like, I wanted to be generous. Why are you begrudging my generosity? And then Jesus goes to this, like, the last shall be first line. Again, a little bit of a weird one. That last line, verse 16, it's so famous in the ministry of Jesus, but the parable is a little weird, right? Because it's a confrontation with the thing that kicks up in us, that gap between what we think we know about the world, what we think we know about God, and like what we think we ourselves deserve. And Jesus is going like, oh, hold on a minute, like not so fast. Like Luke 18, there's this parable Jesus gives that kind of helps you clarify what's going on here, where a person walks in to the temple and sees thank God I'm not like these other people. I thank you, God. Like, I need forgiveness, but I don't need forgiveness like these people all need forgiveness. Thank you very much, God. And then there's a tax collector that comes in and goes, have mercy on me, a sinner. And Jesus goes, that's it right there. Like, that's actually the posture of like what grace looks like when it shows up in someone's story. Not a series of scorekeepings and I deserves and I'm better thans, but like a humility that says, like, yeah, I don't necessarily understand all the ways the world works, and I've got my opinions on how it should go, but like, I understand that God's power, God's position, God's standard of grace, like I might be the person tomorrow that is at the 11th hour waiting for someone to give me a denarius for the day because at the end of the day, the kiddos still need their rotisserie chickens and we're still putting shoes on and whatever else, right? So there's something in this passage about the nature of entitlement I want to call out to you and share with you so that we can see it in ourselves. Because again, we can see it in others. At the four-way stop, we can see it in others when, whenever whatever comes to mind for you. This is tough for us to see in ourselves. And so let's call out a couple different things that we see from the parable about the nature of entitlement as Jesus lays it out in the parable. One is that it kind of shows up out of nowhere, right? And doesn't it happen with you? I don't think most of us wake up in the morning and go, man, I really want to give it to some barista today. I really want to just let someone have it. I wake up in the morning, I really want to let a teacher I really want to give it to them. I really want to and then something happens and our values feel violated. Something goes on, something goes sideways, and like that good faith advocacy becomes like just a different thing, right? So one of the things we got to pay attention to, right? Like what is happening in the story here? What's happening in the story? The guy's worked all day. He's tired. He's sweaty. If he's a ginger like me, he's sun-kissed, and that's never good for my positive mental attitude. In my lobster form, I'm going to go receive my denarius. He's at a low tank of resource, right? And there's something that kicks up here. And I think that's one of the things that we can pay attention to. Like, I don't think any of us would wake up and go, I'm entitled. But one of the things, the better way to say this is like, I think when we're looking at this, what do I feel like I'm entitled to? What do I feel like I deserve that I'm not getting? Is actually a confrontation with your values. And this is a good exercise. This is actually a good reflection. What is Jesus trying to communicate in the parable? Like, he wants us to think about, well, now wait, that math doesn't math. If we're paying everyone by their hourly rate, that's a different kind of economy. It's supposed to jar that a little bit. So is the guy like a bad dude for having that thought? I don't think so. It's the gap in the story that gets made up in the interim, right? So one of the things I think it's valuable for us is that, I don't think any of us wake up in the morning and go, I'm entitled. I don't think I'm an entitled person, but let's go to an airport and you will see that I believe that there is a decorum and an order of operations one is supposed to follow. And apparently you all don't understand how it works. You who recline your chair and make me go like the T-Rex arm on an airplane. Do you not understand that I have to go T-Rex arm? Well, you're just maxing and relaxing, kicking back. You paid for that seat and it reclines. I understand this. And yet, when I'm in full T-Rex arm with my laptop, I'm having a confrontation with my own presumptions, about how the world is supposed to work. That's not actually the problem. I think the problem is actually what we do next with it. You know, when that wound moves to a place of infection, and because what is easier for the guy to assume? It's easier for the guy to assume that the vineyard owner is like pulling one on him or is not being fair than it is for him to assume a couple of other things, right? Let's write the story. Let's write the parable. What else could have been going on? Well, the guy could not have been doing a very good job, and maybe they need to go find more workers. You know, like, well, buddy, if you were cutting it at 9 a.m., I wouldn't have to go back in 3 hours. Or maybe the job is a lot bigger than one person. Maybe I underestimated the size or the scope of the task. Does that ever happen in your household? I thought this was like a 1-hour project, and 7 hours later, we've got the power off, and there's small woodland creatures scurrying about our house. Like, I mean, like, what is going? Like, that happens, right? Is it possible that the guy has maybe been a laborer himself, and it's like, man, it's really tough when you don't get picked at the end of the day, but you're providing for your family and like wanting to extend some generosity and grace. But what entitlement will do is take like a wound or a conviction and begin to write a story or build a narrative around it. So don't hear this as, well, you're not allowed to have opinions. You're not allowed to have convictions. You're not allowed to have airport etiquette and how you think the world should work. What are you doing with it? What story are you writing about God? What story are you writing about others? What story are you writing about yourself when that wound moves to infection and it becomes a narrative that you've absorbed? Right? And that's really the essence of the parable. Like this, there's a perceived injustice here that's not actually an injustice. And if the owner, like the next day, hired this guy at the 11th hour, it would be a grace. It would be a way he could provide for his family. It'd be like, man, that's the kind of kingdom I want to participate in. That's the kind of guy I want to work for, who's not trying to give me 1/4 of a denarius. Like, you'd want that if you were on the other side of it, but here in this place, you can't see it. It's a funny little story that happens after this, because Jesus will predict his death for the 3rd time. And then James and John, 2 of his like closest disciples, have their mom called Jesus over, like, you know, and like she bows to him and they bow before him, and like, okay, he honors her in that. Like, okay, her name's Salome. What can I do for you? And she basically, you know, she kind of, you can read it right here in verse 23-ish. Hey, whenever we get to the other side of what this kingdom's going to be, you know, the military thing, the political thing, whatever the thing, can my sons be on your right hand? Okay, now if we think about high horse for a minute, we're back to high horse, because that would be like, they're going to be on the high horses. Like, they're going to be important in whatever the kingdom is. Now, what I love about what Jesus does here is that he doesn't, like, scold Salome for asking that question. He doesn't, like, you know, she's doing what like any mother wants for their son, right? Like to flourish, to have a fulfilling life. What Jesus actually does is turn to the guys and like, can you drink from the same cup I'm drinking from? And they're like, we can. And he's like, you don't know what you're asking. Kind of says to the population, who then will begin to argue out of Salome's request. All the disciples get a little ruffled about this. He goes, you don't know what you're asking for. Your picture of greatness is distorted by a litany of other things you've come into this ministry like absorbing about greatness. And I want to redefine that picture for you. So like if in verse 16, the last shall be first, the first shall be last, look at verse 28, that you want to experience what a great life looks like. You want to experience what greatness on display looks like. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. We're not doing the high horse thing where we're going to go lord our power over people. We're not wielding swords and crowns. We're wearing towels. We're washing feet. That's what we're doing here. You want to know what greatness looks like? Look at your mom. James and John? Like, because what is she doing? She's coming to me. She's like pressing for you. She's like advocating for you. She's sacrificially loved you, nurtured you, raised you up to this place, has longings for you. Like, you want to look at greatness, you got two really good examples here in me and your mom that should wrestle with your predetermined images that you're now leveraging to, like, where you would have your mom come advocate on your behalf for like a spot on the high horse. Come down off the high horse, because that's not what this kingdom is. The way you're going to find life is through serving, through caring for others, through embodying like what this kingdom is about, embodying this grace. So if we're going to pay attention to like entitlement in our story, let's look at our wounds and where our wounds have become assumptions and where our assumptions have become narratives and victimhoods that we're walking in, and say, hey, how does the grace and mercy of Jesus speak to us about us so that we might approach God differently, so that we might approach others differently, and so that we might pay attention to ourselves differently. So let's try to apply this and begin to end. Okay, what do we do if we can feel or see in ourselves any part of this, as much as it's like uncomfortable, right? If we can see like a little bit of like, I don't think I deserve this or that, but like, okay, maybe I do think that sometimes, maybe I do see that sometimes in me. Okay, what do we do about that? Like, one thing I would say is we listen to ourselves. We listen to ourselves. If you go back to the passage for a minute, that's actually what Jesus is kind of doing in the exchange with the worker. You know, the worker that wants to talk to the manager, wants to talk to the owner, file his complaint. Hey, I thought I was going to maybe get 4 times the amount because these guys were getting 1 denarius. Like, the vineyard owner basically is like, did you not remember what we agreed to? Are you listening to yourself here? Oh, are you telling me how to run my vineyard? Like, are you begrudging my generosity? One of the translations says. Like, it's ultimately kind of a way of saying like, hey, are you hearing yourself right now? We talk to ourselves a whole lot. We might not listen as well to ourselves as, maybe meaning this, we might listen to some of the wrong impulses, right? Some of the things I think the parable is asking us to pay attention to is the places where we go, I deserve, I want, and like, if the answer is different, is it a confrontation with your values as it relates to justice and how the world should work? Or was it that, and it's moved into a place because of infection and resentment and bitterness, that now it's like, now we're just dealing with infection for infection's sake? Let me be clear about something, because some of us from our family of origin, like we actually, and I just have to be really careful with this. This is not my way of saying, oh, you have a rough life? Tell me more about that. Suck it up, buttercup. Like, that's actually what some of you, I'm afraid that some of you would hear that and think like this is a permission, like you have no permission to feel. You're not allowed to be angry, because first learned is last forgotten sometimes, and that maybe was how some of your households like came up. That's not what's being said here. That's not what's being said here. The reality is, I think those sore spots, those heavy hurts, that place where we're going like, man, everyone else has got this, and when is my time? I did everything right, and look at what happened. I think those are places where the grace and mercy and love of Jesus wants to meet us. The scriptures say the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. So that's not an invitation, stop feeling, but to say, okay, in that grief, Does it move me more toward people that might be experiencing the same thing I'm experiencing? Am I the only one? Like, it keeps that thing from being manipulated by other sources that will turn it into toxic infection in your life and the life of people around you. So this is not just stop feeling pain. Don't talk about pain. Don't be entitled now. No, it's like, no, we can actually confess our pain honestly before God. We can bring our complaint candidly before God. And then what the second piece of this conversation can do is it helps us ground it, right? So what gratitude does when it shows up in our story, hey, I worked a wage, I got a denarius, I'm I'm living, if I put my feet down, like it gets me out of like that Costco spatial awareness where I'm just spiraling and I'm taking up the aisle and I'm like in my podcast 2X era and I'm like looking for all the stockpiles of salmon, and the samples, to like, oh, the world, like there's other people in this store besides me. Like that's what gratitude can do. I know it can get redundant and silly when you're like, oh, I got to pray before I eat. I know it can get redundant and silly. Like, did I say my prayers tonight? But I'm telling you, like things that we, like whether we're talking about prayer or we're talking about studying the Bible or whether we're talking about developing a sense of community as a church, these things that we liturgize kind of help us break out of the vortexes that we get sucked into, right? And like just as you can get sucked into a lack of spatial awareness, or you can do what Timothy Chalamet did at the Knicks game, which is like choke out Dear Tina Fey because you're so wrapped up in the action. Just the world can begin to revolve around you. And I get it. Tina Fey sitting courtside at a Knicks game. She's not suffering. But like, I'm sure she didn't have on her bingo card Timothy Chalamet's elbow in my face while I'm watching all of this action happen, okay? So again, if I'm just charitable to Mr. Chalamet, there's no shade here. There's no beef between us. You get wrapped up in the action in front of you, and what does it do? It sucks you in. And gratitude, grounds us back in a sense of spatial awareness. I'm not just thinking about what I lack, but I'm thinking about what I have. I'm not just thinking about what I don't have, but I'm thinking about what I do have the capacity to do. I'm not just thinking about that thing that someone did. If you've got a grievance or you're frustrated with someone today, like if you could think 5 things about them, boy, they sure make a handsome ham steak, and they are kind of a funny person, and it gets us out of that spiral of you never change the kitty litter. I always change the kitty litter. Or whatever else that you're fighting about, but there's another thing going on. It's not really about kitty litter. It's about something else. It's about some kind of value violation that's gotten infected. Gratitude grounds us in that way. Right? So what would it look like even before you leave here today, even as this guy keeps droning on, to you just to begin to make a mental list of man, what are the things I'm grateful for today? What has God blessed me with today? That just gets me out of, it doesn't minimize my pain, but it grounds me in my pain. I'm not just consumed by the thing that I'm lacking, but I'm thinking about the thing that I have and the things that I have and the graciousness that God has brought to my story. And then ultimately, what is Jesus' point in both the parable and in the corollary with Salome? That greatness is going to be found in serving others. And this is not just a commercial for serving other people, but it is to say, if you're ever in a position where you just need to get out of your own head for a minute, creating rhythms and habits that purposely force you to have to do that are good ways. There's a story that gets told by this person, this woman named Anne. She moved to Philadelphia in 2007, got her first big girl job, was excited to be far from her family of origin, which was kind of a toxic setup and situation, and ready to go have real pressures and real responsibilities and all the things. So she gets to Philly, she's got her apartment, she's living her best life. Maybe that's some of you in Baltimore. That's maybe your story. You can relate to that. Okay, we're going to make it after all. And she's got this apartment. She runs kind of as a coping mechanism to deal with the heavy, hard things in her life. And she realizes there's this homeless shelter kind of adjacent to her apartment. And she's like, oh, that kind of stinks because I wouldn't have gotten this place. I wouldn't have been real comfortable with that if I had known. Because I'm running at like 6 o'clock in the morning because remember, I got a big girl job. But I really need to do this. It really helps me process my pressures. And so off she goes. And first she runs on the opposite side of the street. And then after a while, after a couple weeks of running on the opposite side of the street, she begins to see, like, I see the same faces out there at like 6 a.m. every day. So like, it's maybe fine to run in this pathway. I'm not putting myself in an unsafe situation. And then putting herself like to that other side of the street, turns to the runner head nod, whatever thing you do, just to say like, hey, I'm running, please don't run into me and I won't run into you. Which becomes like ultimately some witty banter, like, is this all you do? Like, and she's going, is this all you do? Stand outside at 6 o'clock in the morning? Which becomes like a sense of, why do you do this? Like, well, it helps me process my stress. And someone else going, well, maybe I should run too if it helps me process my stress. Which leads to her calling the guy that runs the shelter, like, hey, I'd like to start a running club. And the shelter owner going, like, homeless people don't run. And to her saying, like, no, like, please, like, please, can I do this? And maybe you've heard of her organization that she's since sold the organization, but it's called Back on My Feet. And what it does is it creates a sense of community in that sense of, like, hey, where you have felt some hard things and I've felt some hard things, like, we can create a community that pushes us towards a different kind of thing. And whether we're talking about the well and the healing hive that's there or things that are happening at the Foundry, getting our hands dirty, getting our lives connected to other people's lives, not from a place of comparison, but from like the towel of servanthood can help us frame our pain so that it doesn't move to a place of bitterness, so it doesn't move to a place of resentment. Let's close here. There's one of my favorite like bands from the mid-2000s, and one of their songs, they would say, the beauty of grace is that it makes life not fair. The beauty of grace is that it makes life not fair. And man, you didn't need me to tell you that life's not fair. Like, you got a whole novel, and I do too. This text is not telling us, pay no attention to that pain behind the curtain. It's pulling back the curtain and saying, let the grace and mercy of Jesus meet that pain. And reframe it. Maybe reframe it to bless someone else. Maybe reframe it to ground you in a sense of gratitude for the things God has entrusted to you. Maybe reframe it from the sense of going, the grace you don't need today might be the grace you're begging for tomorrow. You're human. You're not a chatbot. So what communion helps us do is just remember the character of this vineyard owner. It's not a checkbox to rush to, we're almost to brunch. It's to say, hey, let's slow down for a minute and receive the grace and gratitude of Jesus in our story. Like, really let it sink into us. That if compared to God, I don't deserve anything. But the grace and mercy of Jesus has moved towards me. Been sacrificial on my behalf. Deals with my complaints. And moves me towards a view of others and a view of kingdom that breaks lesser ways of understanding how the world works. That's what we do when we come to the Lord's table. We're trying to receive that. We're remembering that frustrating thing for you today, like someone is like, you're tempted to go like, well, I shouldn't complain. I don't really want to complain. That before God's presence, you can. You can bring your complaint. You can bring your frustration. You can bring that feeling of, when's it my time? And let the love of God meet you there. And go with you from there to wherever God is leading you. May I pray for you as we come to the tables, as we receive the grace and mercy of Jesus in our story, as we aim to integrate what a sacrificial life looks like in light of how we've been sacrificed for. God, would you help us to receive the beauty of this invitation? There's so many things telling us what we deserve, what we don't deserve, what we do. It can all be so messy. It can be noise in our head and mixed with our pain. It's a dangerous cocktail. Clarify our pain so that we might encounter grace. Clarify our hurts so that your compassion and your mercy would meet us. And clarify our pictures of greatness that we've adopted and normalized so that we might compare it to what you're actually inviting us to live into. Help us to receive the beauty of this invitation today in the name of Jesus.